Good morning vlog. It is already Thursday, April 4th, and I'm having a slightly aggravated morning. I'm trying to make the best of it. I was trying to find a workaround for the iTunes block that I'm coming up with my podcast, the Built-in Obsolescence podcast. And I'm trying to go through another RSS feed service called FeedBurner, where it gives me a little bit more control over what I can, how I can configure the RSS feed. And as a little recap from what I got from iTunes support is that my podcast feed, the artwork for it, the URL that goes to that artwork is being automatically redirected somewhere else, and that is because of the hosting platform that I'm using. That's one of their features to allow basically whenever you visit the website, all the images and whatnot have several different sizes. So whether you're on a phone or on a desktop computer, the appropriate image, sized image, will show up on your display no matter what size it is. So I think that's a feature of my hosting platform that I'm using, and because of the redirect, it's not playing nicely with iTunes. So I'm trying to link to the image directly without going through a redirect, and FeedBurner is allowing me to put in the direct URL to that image. And I think I'm slightly making progress on that in that I just deleted the feed again on iTunes, and I'm trying to revalidate it. And it's accepting the FeedBurner RSS feed that I'm providing it, but I'm still getting denied because the image URL, I guess, for the artwork now has I like to use a secure website for my hosting platform, so I have this the SSL certificate option checked, where whenever you go to my website, it uses HTTPS as opposed to your standard HTTP, which gives just a little bit more security between the visitor of my website and the communications that go on between the visitor and my website. And I mean, technically it's not needed or not necessary, at least for the purposes of my website, because I'm not doing any e-commerce. I'm not really asking for any information from users that visit my website. So I could take that off. However, I do know that there is a penalty in a way, that Google and other search engines will kind of downgrade that website because it does not use an SSL certificate or have HTTPS enabled by default. However, when you have that type of security in, I can see why iTunes denies it, because it's putting in a little bit more of a roadblock, and that encryption can hamper the information that the iTunes service fetches, that iTunes takes from my website. So having that encryption in there can interfere with their systems, which then interferes with the podcast feed that then they try and provide to their users, and that can yield a bad experience for their users. And if there's anything that Apple puts on the highest of pedestals, is the ease and comfort for their users, and not wanting to really inconvenience them too much. So I made the decision to take off the SSL certificate for my website. That's going to take about 72 hours max to fully propagate through the search indexes. And so once that happens, then I'll resubmit the podcast feed yet again and see if we can validate it properly this time. And I'm going to double check all my links to make sure that it uses HTTP as opposed to HTTPS, to make sure that SSL certificate is no longer being applied. And hopefully I can finally get this podcast fracking going. On top of that, though, I did also configure my desktop to be a remote desktop for my iPad, and so that will help alleviate some of the issues where when I need a desktop interface, like for example, making certain changes to my website that require the desktop interface and I can't do through the app, I can just I'm using the Chrome Remote Desktop app on iOS, and then there's also a plugin for Chrome provided by Google that is just called Chrome Remote Desktop. I'll link to it in the description down below whenever I upload this to YouTube. But you install it on your desktop. You can configure it through a little wizard to allow for a remote desktop connection from another client on your Google account. So as long as you have the same Google account, you're signed in on the Chrome Remote Desktop app on your iPad or even your iPhone. It works on the iPhone as well. I've used this in the past. You can access your desktop environment wherever you are. You can also configure it to only be on your local network. So if you just want to use your desktop in another room, but you don't want to be in the same room as your desktop, you can configure it to be that way as well. And this will be incredibly useful for me whenever I'm out on the road or remote at work or something like that. I need to hop onto my desktop real quick and do some work there. And I've used this in the past. I mentioned that I used this in the past whenever I was going through the iPad student experiment stuff with that blog many moons ago, back in college, whenever I was trying to use only the iPad for all of my schoolwork in college for an entire semester. There were some instances where the tools that I had to use for some classes required going online through a certain system, and those systems used clunky JavaScript or Flash that did not work on the iPad or did not display correctly. And so for me to still get my work done, because like that I had to do like quizzes and other projects and things like that through this interface, but still stay somewhat true to my personal challenge of using the iPad for all my schoolwork, I found a remote desktop solution. First solution was through LogMeIn, because at the time they had a free service that I could use, but then once that turned to paid only, then I had to find another solution, and then the Chrome Remote Desktop app came out, and I learned about that. So I had been using that years ago. I'm glad to get it back on. I'm glad that Google is still supporting that. It's not one of the projects that they've killed, unlike Reader and unlike Google Plus and unlike Inbox. So sad. So I hope they'll continue on to support that, because it's a very useful tool, and I plan to use it just in the near future. Anyway, I got to get to work. I'm running late. Just wanted to provide a midday update. I'm on my way out to lunch. Just need a little bit of change of scenery. I forgot lunch today, and I forgot a backup meal. I actually was able to find a few of these Atkins drinks on clearance whenever we went grocery shopping one time. I'm like, you know what? Those are mostly keto friendly, and I could use those as an emergency meal sometime. But I forgot to bring those with me just in case. So I need to do that next time. But I did kind of lose track of time, and I've done a little bit of a long fast today, which works for me because doing intermittent fasting with keto really does help. But sometimes I just can't go a full day without eating anything. So I'm going to go get some food in my stomach. It'll help me concentrate more to finish out the day strong. And that's what I'm doing. All right, vlog, getting back to the office from lunch, and I was taking the opportunity on my way back to just take advantage of the nice day outside and try some new photography shots around the building that I'm at. And I'm thinking of like using it as some, like, not stock photography, but just photos that I can use for an Instagram post in the future, and then also repurpose a little bit later using an app like Typorama to add some quotations or some kind of inspirational quotes or something like that. So just my thoughts that I can type out and add to them for the future. Getting a little bit winded walking up the steps with all this extra equipment, some extra baggage on me as well. And then also talking at the same time. But anyway, so the point of that exercise was because it got me into a mindset that I should be taking a lot more photographs, just because the medium that I'm shooting on is purely digital. Data storage specifically is cheap. And so I'm just taking advantage of that with all this video that I'm shooting for the vlog, and then also a lot of photographs that I'm taking. I took a ton out on the balcony. I have a few shots from there that I can use, and I'm hoping from this impromptu photo session that I did on my way back from work, I can use hopefully one or two photos from there as well. I tried a couple of different poses out and things, so hopefully it'll work. And that inspiration is coming from whenever I was actually watching a Gary Vee vlog earlier today, and he kept on nailing on the aspect of content and content creation. And so that got me to thinking, well, how can, in addition to doing the vlog and taking photographs, what other content can I do? And he's like, he dropped a line like, you Google it, you fracking, like, go to Google and get a copy of Photoshop and you go to work. And so I was like, I can't really afford Photoshop right now, and I don't want to work with the GIMP, but I do have a couple of tools at my disposal on iOS that I can use for photo touch-up and whatnot. I mean, there are the obvious ones like filters I can use and whatnot on iOS itself. That's already built in. I mean, like, you also have the built-in filters on Instagram. But aside from doing that is also adding in captions, adding in quotes, other types of graphics that apps like Typorama can do. And I'm going to be exploring that more and more in my free time as I generate more photos that I think, like, you know what, a caption would be good here. And adding, this type of graphic would be great in addition to using this photograph that I took sometime. So that's kind of my thought process that I'm going through right now in terms of content creation and how I can make more content with the tools that I currently have at my disposal. And who knows, maybe at some point in the future, I'll be able to hire someone independently to start making that content for me. I provide them the raw data, and then they refine it into a polished piece of content. But for right now, I'm doing the grunt work all myself. I'm doing the documenting myself, as you can see from here. And I'm also, I'm just going through, I'm spewing out my thoughts on camera in order to document this process that I'm going through, and I'm hoping you're getting something out of it as well. I mean, I don't get that many views on YouTube at all, if any, and I don't really care right now. This is all just the process for me. I know that eventually in the long run it will hopefully pay off. That's what I'm kind of banking on here. Call it a long-term investment. Maybe it won't pop, maybe I just suck. We'll find out. But I'm just really early in this game, and if you're watching this right now, thanks for joining along with me. Dang it, I got cut off. But if you're seeing this right now, thank you so much for coming along with me on this journey. I really do appreciate it. If you want to reach out, by all means, hit me up either in the YouTube comments down below, hit me up on Snapchat. I'm at Phil Casper on Snapchat. Hit me up on Instagram, at Phil Casper on Instagram. Hit me up on Twitter, at Phil Casper on Twitter. Hey, at Phil Casper, just about everywhere except for Facebook, unfortunately. I can't remember who got that first. But anyway, anyway, I just wanted to do a quick blurb before going back to work. about what my current process is that I'm going through right now and what my current thoughts are. Heading back home after work, really want to try and get a slightly different angle from what I was shooting earlier in the afternoon for lunch. But since it's so late in the day, it's probably almost 6 o'clock, I guess now, maybe 5:30. Since it's so late, I don't want to risk the front doors to lock behind me because I have to put my phone inside on the tripod and shoot outside the way that I have the shot set up. Because I also want kind of the downtown Dallas skyline to be in the background that I'm looking at, but I don't want to risk me getting locked out and my phone being locked in and having to wait for somebody else to open the door for me. So I think I'm just going to err on the side of caution and try and get that shot tomorrow. I'm hoping between now and when I leave this office next week, we'll have a good a sunny day, or an overcast day, something that's a little bit softer but still not just rainy. So that's what I'm thinking right now, but I'll just have to try that shot later, and I'll look to see what other kinds of shots I can make today. Back at home, and I reached out to Squarespace just to see if there is potentially anything they can do to help with the whole podcast situation. I don't really have too high of hopes, so I'm already starting to look for alternative platforms that I could look into. I'm considering going with Anchor just so I can learn the platform and how that system works, and B, it's free, and this is the Built-in Obsolescence podcast is just an experimental podcast in a way anyway. So it may do me some good to just learn a whole alternative system and just to not be reliant on one platform, because then this thing that I've been trying to get off the ground for what seems like weeks now, it would probably already be solved if I just had an alternative. But anyway, I'll keep you updated on that. It's getting a little bit later in the evening now, so I'm going to probably start getting ready for bed, and then if I do have some time while I'm not sleepy, or I guess until I get sleepy, I'll use some apps on iOS to touch up some photos that I took earlier today and from previous days as well, to hopefully make some extra content that I can post later, and I'll share that at some point in the future. Just keep an eye on, say, Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and whatnot, all at philcasper.net.